When you're told you have 6 months to live, something snaps in your brain. It's like your entire operating system gets rewritten in an instant. The noise that used to dominate your life, emails, deadlines, petty arguments, social media likes, goes silent. You stop caring about the artificial scoreboard the world tells you to chase. Instead, the signal comes through loud and clear. What actually matters is shockingly small, but infinitely more valuable than anything you were losing sleep over. You realize you've been living on autopilot, letting momentum and habit decide your days. Suddenly, every morning feels different. You wake up knowing this could be one of your last 180 sunrises, and that's not a metaphor anymore, it's math. And math like that forces you to ask hard questions. Who do I want to see? What work do I want to put into the world? What do I want my last conversations to be about? You find yourself cutting away the unnecessary like a sculptor removing marble. There's no time for someday. There's only now. You don't save the good wine for a future dinner that may never happen. You don't put off telling someone you love them until the right moment. You don't keep your dreams in a box labeled later. Later doesn't exist anymore. And here's the wild thing. Once you've seen life through that lens, you can't go back. Even if the clock extends, even if the diagnosis changes, that clarity stays with you like a permanent upgrade. You know how pointless most of your old worries were. You understand that relationships, purpose, and creating something meaningful outweigh every status symbol or fleeting achievement you once thought defined you. Clarity doesn't just make you grateful. It makes you bold. You stop asking for permission. You stop trying to make everyone comfortable. You stop saying yes to things that aren't aligned with the few things you now know are worth your finite energy. It's not about being reckless. It's about being precise. Precision with time, precision with effort, precision with love. A 6-month prognosis is brutal, yes, but it's also the most honest feedback life will ever give you. It strips you of the illusion that you're guaranteed another decade, another year, even another week. And once you see that truth, you don't waste your seconds. You use them like they're the last fuel you have for the rocket you're building. If more people lived with that kind of clarity, the world would be unrecognizable. We'd stop chasing meaningless goals and start building lives we're actually proud of. That's the gift buried inside the tragedy. The wake-up call most people never get until it's too late. And once you answer it, you're never the same. When you come face to face with mortality, the world you thought you knew collapses into something far simpler and far more real. The layers of pretense, the games people play, the unwritten rules of how you're supposed to live, they all burn away. Death doesn't care about your reputation, your job title, your curated social media profile, or how polite you were at the last dinner party. When the countdown is real, none of that has any weight. What's left is raw, unfiltered truth. You start noticing how much of your life was spent performing, smiling when you didn't mean it, saying yes when you wanted to say no, acting busy to appear important, buying things to signal success instead of actually feeling successful. Mortality makes all of that feel absurd. It's like suddenly seeing the stage lights and realizing the play is over. You don't have to pretend anymore. Distractions disappear too. You stop being interested in the endless scrolling, the fake emergencies, the political drama you can't control, the gossip about people you don't even care about. You realize how much of your attention was stolen by things designed to keep you passive, obedient, and exhausted. Mortality hands you a kind of X-ray vision for life. You can see straight through the shiny surface to the emptiness underneath. And once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. The same goes for societal expectations. The blueprint you were handed: go to school, get a job, climb the ladder, retire at 65, maybe enjoy a few good years before you fade out, feels ridiculous when you're staring at the possibility of not making it past next season. You understand that the safe path was never really safe. You stop following the rules that were written to keep you average. Instead, you focus on what is undeniably yours: your time, your energy, your relationships, your work. You start making decisions based on alignment with your values, not on whether they'll win applause from the crowd. You care less about fitting in and more about feeling alive. You spend more time with the people who light you up and zero time with those who drain you. You stop playing by the script and start writing your own. And here's the paradox. When you shed the distractions, the pretenses, and the societal programming, you actually become more dangerous. Dangerous in the sense that you can't be manipulated by fear of judgment or failure. Dangerous because you're acting from pure intent, not performance. Dangerous because you're living on your own terms in a world built to keep you following someone else's plan. Mortality is the most ruthless teacher, but it's also the most effective. It shows you that the only things worth holding on to are the ones you can't fake: love, purpose, creation, and presence. Everything else is just noise. And once you've heard the silence beneath the noise, you'll never let it be drowned out again. Most people think the goal is to live longer. Add more years, more birthdays, more calendar pages. But here's the truth. If those extra years are empty, if they're filled with the same dull routines, the same compromises, the same avoidance of risk, then all you've done is walk yourself toward the inevitable. Real living is not about extending time. It's about turning the time you have into something so dense with meaning, so charged with intensity, that it bends your perception of what a life can be. When you're told your time might be short, the whole idea of someday evaporates. You stop treating your days like an infinite resource and start treating them like gold in your hands. Suddenly, it's not about waiting for retirement, waiting for the perfect opportunity, waiting for someone else to give you permission. You start doing the things you've been putting off, not because they're on a bucket list, but because they matter now. And here's the twist. Quality doesn't mean cramming every second with activity. It's not about being constantly busy or chasing adrenaline like a junkie. Intensifying your life is about precision. It's about being fully present in the conversations you have, the work you create, the places you stand. It's about saying no to the meaningless so you have room to say yes to the extraordinary. Think about it. A single hour of deep, undistracted connection with someone you love can be worth more than a month of shallow interactions. One bold step towards something you believe in can outweigh a year of cautious drifting. One honest, unfiltered choice can ripple further through your life than decades of playing safe. When you focus on quality, every moment becomes a multiplier. You stop waiting for big breaks and start manufacturing meaning out of what's right in front of you. You realize that happiness isn't something you'll stumble upon later. It's something you build in real time with the materials you have right now. The irony is, when you live this way, time feels different. A single year lived with intensity can feel longer, fuller, more expansive than 10 years spent coasting. You measure your life not in years, but in moments that actually mattered. The mistake most people make is assuming that longevity automatically equals a good life. It doesn't. You can live to 100 and still die never having truly been alive. And you can live half as long but experience more beauty, courage, connection, and creation than most people will ever touch. So the question isn't, how much time do I have? The question is, how much life can I fit into the time I have left? Because in the end, it's not the length of the runway that counts. It's what you do with the flight. Urgency changes everything. It rewires the way you think, the way you act, the way you decide. When you believe you have unlimited time, hesitation feels harmless. You delay, you overthink, you wait for the perfect conditions that never arrive. But when the clock is ticking and you can hear each second slipping away, hesitation isn't just costly, it's lethal to your potential. Urgency kills the luxury of later and replaces it with a single command: move now. When urgency takes over, fear loses its grip. You stop obsessing over what could go wrong, because there's no space for that kind of mental clutter. There's only room for forward motion. You make the call, you take the risk, you start the project you've been avoiding for years. The fear is still there, but urgency drowns it out. The ticking clock becomes louder than your doubts. Urgency forces you to prioritize with brutal clarity. Suddenly, you can see the difference between what's truly important and what's just noise. You stop wasting hours on things that don't move the needle. You stop entertaining people and problems that have no place in the life you're trying to build. Every action is filtered through one question: will this matter when the clock hits zero? The interesting thing is that urgency doesn't just make you faster, it makes you bolder. Without the safety net of endless time, you're willing to leap farther, speak louder, and try things you never would have dared before. It's not about recklessness, it's about precision paired with courage. You move because you know waiting is a guarantee of regret. And bold action has a compounding effect. One decisive step leads to another. Momentum builds, and suddenly you're in places you never thought you'd reach. Opportunities that were invisible before start to appear because you're no longer sitting on the sidelines waiting for them to knock. You've gone out to meet them. Urgency also exposes the truth about comfort. It's an illusion. The things you thought were safe start to look like traps. The familiar routines, the steady paycheck, the predictable schedule, they can all be prisons disguised as security. Urgency smashes those walls and forces you into the open air, where every move counts and every second has weight. Here's the part most people miss. You don't need a terminal diagnosis or a crisis to find this level of urgency. You can choose it. You can live as if the clock is always running down, because it is. The difference is whether you acknowledge it now or wait until reality forces it on you. When urgency is your baseline, you stop drifting through life and start directing it. You stop wondering what might happen and start making things happen. You stop hesitating and start building, speaking, creating, because hesitation kills dreams, but urgency turns them into reality. Predictions are just numbers. They're the output of models built on past events, probabilities, and patterns. They're useful, but they're not prophecy. When you're handed a prediction, whether it's a medical prognosis, a business forecast, or a statistical chance of success, you're not being told the future. You're being handed a range of possibilities based on what's happened before. But the future isn't built by what's happened before. It's built by what you do next. Data can tell you the odds, but it can't account for the full force of human will. It can't measure the stubbornness of someone who refuses to quit. It can't quantify the exact moment when a person decides that failure is simply not an option. And it definitely can't predict what happens when mindset flips from "I hope" to "I will." That's when the impossible starts to shift. Willpower isn't magic, it's relentless focus. It's waking up every day and making choices that align with your desired outcome, no matter how uncomfortable or exhausting they are. It's pushing back against the natural tendency to coast or surrender. Most people underestimate how much control they still have when the odds look bad, because they hand over their fate to the statistics instead of fighting to bend them. Mindset is the multiplier. A strong will with a defeatist mindset still collapses under pressure. But combine unshakable will with the mindset that obstacles are just part of the process, and you start to see the cracks in the so-called impossible. Mindset decides whether you treat a prediction as a verdict or as a challenge. And when you treat it as a challenge, you start looking for angles, for experiments, for ways to tilt the game in your favor. The truth is, predictions don't scare me, they motivate me. If someone says you have a 5% chance, that's still a chance. If the data says you can't do it, that's only true until you prove otherwise. And when you do, you don't just change your own story, you change the data for everyone who comes after you. Think about every breakthrough in history. Someone was told it couldn't be done. The numbers said it was pointless. The experts wrote it off. And yet it happened, not because the math was wrong, but because the math didn't account for the human factor. The raw, unpredictable, often irrational force of belief paired with consistent action. So when you're handed a prediction, remember this: data is the map, but willpower is the engine, and mindset is the fuel. A map might show you where most people stop. It can't show you where you can go if you refuse to stop. Odds are just odds, until you decide they're irrelevant. That's when you stop living inside someone else's prediction and start building your own reality. Most people live like the clock isn't running. They move through their days as if there's an endless supply of them, like tomorrow is guaranteed and next year is already booked in the calendar. But here's the truth: your countdown clock is already ticking. You just haven't seen the numbers. Every second that passes is gone forever, and the total you've got left is shrinking whether you acknowledge it or not. When you really let that sink in, it changes everything. Suddenly, the idea of wasting a day feels insane. You start to measure time not in hours or weeks, but in opportunities, conversations you could have, projects you could start, experiences you could create. Every moment becomes a decision point. Spend it building something that matters, or let it dissolve into the background noise of a forgettable life. Treating each day like the clock is ticking doesn't mean living in panic. It means living with precision. It means cutting out the filler, the obligations you take on just to please people, the distractions that eat away at your best energy. It means giving the prime hours of your day to the work, the people, and the challenges that actually move your life forward. You stop saying, "someday," and start saying, "today." You make the call you've been avoiding. You start the thing you've been planning in your head for years. You take the trip, write the book, pitch the idea, not because the conditions are perfect, but because you understand they never will be. Waiting is just a polite form of wasting. And here's the paradox. When you live like time is running out, time actually feels richer. Colors seem sharper, conversations go deeper, work feels more purposeful. You're no longer drifting through days. You're fully inside them. You're not surviving time, you're investing it. This way of living also makes you fearless in a strange way. If you know the clock is always ticking, then rejection, embarrassment, or failure stop feeling like such big threats. You realize the real threat is letting the clock hit zero while you are still holding back. That fear is worse than any short-term discomfort. The truth is, you don't know whether you have 50 years left or 50 days. Nobody does. The only thing you control is how you use the time that's in front of you right now. And if you live like the countdown is visible, you'll stop letting meaningless things steal your attention. You'll stop waiting for permission. You'll stop postponing the life you actually want to live. Every single day, the clock moves. You can't pause it. You can't rewind it. But you can make sure that when it hits zero, you won't wish you had done things differently. You'll know you treated every second as if it mattered, because it did. Most people can find urgency when there's a deadline staring them in the face. A project due tomorrow, a bill that has to be paid, a crisis they can't avoid. In those moments, they move fast, think sharp, and act without hesitation. But the moment the pressure's gone, they drift back into comfort. The secret is to never let that urgency fade, to live as if the clock says, 6 months left, every single day, for the rest of your life. Why 6 months? Because it's long enough to build something meaningful, but short enough to kill the illusion of infinite time. It forces you to ask the right questions. What actually matters to me? Who do I want to spend my limited time with? What do I want to create before my window closes? When you live like you have 6 months left, you don't waste days on things that don't pass that test. This isn't about being reckless. It's about being intentional at a level most people never reach. You strip out everything that's just filler. You stop negotiating with procrastination. You stop saying, I'll get to it later, because later doesn't exist anymore. You make the call now. You launch the idea now. You tell the truth now. Every action becomes a step towards something that will matter when the clock hits zero. And here's the thing, urgency is a muscle. If you only use it when life throws you into a corner, it stays weak. But if you train it daily, by setting real deadlines for yourself, by refusing to drift, by keeping your goals visible and uncomfortably close, you build a permanent state of forward motion. You stop waiting for external pressure and start generating your own. Living this way changes how you see risk. When you believe you have decades to spare, you play it safe, because failure feels like a waste of time. But when you live like you have 6 months, failure is just part of the process. You don't have time to obsess over it. You move, you learn, you adjust, and you keep going. Speed becomes more important than perfection. This approach also redefines success. You stop measuring it in abstract, far-off milestones and start measuring it in daily progress. Did you build something today? Did you connect with someone who matters? Did you take one meaningful step toward the life you actually want? If the answer is yes, you won. Most people won't live like this because it's uncomfortable. It demands focus, discipline, and the courage to walk away from anything that doesn't matter. But that discomfort is exactly what keeps the urgency alive. The moment you start feeling too comfortable, you know you're slipping back into the slow death of plenty of time. The real trick isn't finding urgency when you're forced to. It's keeping it alive when you're not. Living as if you have 6 months left isn't morbid. It's the most powerful way to stay awake. And when you live like that permanently, you don't just get more done. You get more life out of every single day. So here's the truth. None of us know our exact countdown. Maybe it's decades. Maybe it's months. Maybe it's already closer than we think. But if you live like the clock is visible, if you strip away the noise, if you treat every day as the last stretch before the finish line, you'll start building a life that's impossible to regret. Not a life of waiting, but a life of doing. Not a life padded with someday, but a life stacked with I did. When the real zero finally comes, you won't be wishing for more time. You'll be grateful for how you used the time you had. And that, in the end, is what living was always supposed to mean.